Martial arts has completely changed my life.
This is Reid Presley, one of the greatest martial artists to ever behold the bostaff. Reid is a national champion in sport karate and specifically in creative, musical, and extreme. In today's conversation, we get the opportunity to chat with him about his experience in martial arts and what he hopes to see in the next generation for years to come.
I think that martial arts has the power to really impact the world because the characteristics in which you get from it can just make you an awesome person, and you can find a lot of success in other areas outside of martial arts.
If you enjoy this podcast, feel free to like and subscribe and comment below your favorite part. May I please welcome Reid Presley. Thank you so much, Reid, for coming on.
Absolutely. I'm super excited to be here. Ready to jump right into it. Really appreciate it.
So how did you get started in martial arts, and kind of walk me through the journey up until now?
Absolutely. Man, I feel like every time I do this, I end up leaving something out. So I'm going to do my best not to just jump way, into the now, as I'm just getting a little bit older. I started martial arts when I was 5 years old. I am not one of those kids that I remember was like, I want to go do martial arts. And so my parents went and signed me up. I actually had a friend whose name was Chase, who was doing martial arts at the time at Bartlett Taekwondo outside of Memphis, Tennessee. And he invited me to one of those bring a friend, break a board kind of referral type of days inside of the martial arts school. I fell in love with it. And at the time, I think my parents were debating whether or not they would put me into one. I don't even know what the other extracurricular activity would be, or martial arts. And so Chase asking me to go to that martial arts class, I think, was definitely some divine intervention, to get me into martial arts. And so fell in love with it. It wasn't too long after that. I don't know if I had been to I think I might have gone to one graduation and going for my yellow belt, and my dad saw a father and two son trio doing a form together. And the reason why that's relevant is because he then wanted to get the entire family involved. So that's when, my brother Cole, my mom, my dad, they all started. Jake and Avery were not in the picture yet. And it was just us, and we started doing martial arts at Bartlett Taekwondo. Mr. B was the instructor, and actually my current instructor and head instructor here and co-owner of this school, Jason Warren, was also there. So that's where I met him. That is really cool that he was there because my dad was in competitive baseball, and he wanted us to compete. We played baseball, we did soccer, we did everything. But when he found out you could compete inside of martial arts, he was having a field day. He's like, we have to do it. And Jason at the time had what he called the extreme team out of Bartlett Taekwondo that would travel the RSKC circuit. And so after my dad was pretty persistent, I will say, he ended up getting me onto the extreme team, started doing private lessons, and started traveling the RSKC circuit, which it's probably Regional Sport Karate Conference or something like that. I actually don't remember. It's been so long. We always use the abbreviations, the acronyms. It was RSKC. And so that really started my competition career from that point. And because I never really stopped. And the RSKC, how it worked is kind of similar to the ProMax circuit now, where they have a bunch of regional circuits or regional tournaments that overlap with a couple of really big ones. The big one for RSKC was Bluegrass Nationals, which was a NASCA tournament at the time in Louisville, Kentucky. It is now the AKA Warrior Cup up in Chicago. And so why that is all relevant is that was my first exposure to a nighttime show when I finally went to the, Bluegrass Nationals, saw NASCA. That's where the Matt Emmicks, the Kalman Chokas, the John Sues, the Gabe Regnagas, the Marcel Jones, I can't name all of them, right? Rudy Raynon, Casey Mark, Lauren Carney, Ross Levine, Raymond Daniels. See, now, once I get started, I feel like I have to say everybody, right? But that's where I first had I want to get up there. I want to be on that stage. And so that really started the whole training all the time type motivation. Without going into every single detail, the RSKC then turned into competing on NASCA. At the time, I, of course, was working on Taekwondo to earn my black belt, started going to the Diamonds, started going to the Pan Ams, the Battle of Atlantas, all the big tournaments, and started competing in black belt. It took me about a year to year and a half to really tap into the black belt divisions. Was doing well on RSKC, got some triple crowns, which is forms, fighting, and weapon. But then jumping into NASCA, jumping into black belt, it's a big push. And then you also have, what we call seedings, the ranked competitors. And for anyone that is maybe listening or tuning in, just cruising around YouTube, a seed is like a competitor that signs up for points. They compete at enough tournaments, place high enough, and they get a certain amount of points per tournament. They then add all those points together, and the top 4 get seeded to go at the last of a division. So if there's 20 people, there's a little bit of an advantage to be a seed because the other 16 would get randomly shuffled, and then these 4 go last. So trying to tap into that is rather difficult, and is a mental and physical battle all in of its own, and it took me about a year and a half to tap into that. Where I'm going with all of this is my career walks a line with a couple of phases of adversity, like struggle points that, really I think shaped me into who I am and what I'm doing now. I started to do well in the seeds. I climbed my way. I started to get into runoffs. There's a couple videos like 2005 Diamond Nationals where I'm going against the 17-year-olds. I'm competing. And then not long after that, I think I just got on AKA and I got like super sick. Don't have to go into the extreme details of it, but a lot of antibiotics, immune system was bad, got sick all the time, couldn't really do anything. Physical movement, it's not going to happen. Like, had to take a break, had to step away for about a year and a half. Come back to the NASCA scene. Now I'm representing AKA American Karate Association, competing, climbing my way up, back through the seeds, going against, I think there was one time where Jackson Rudolph, we go against each other like for the first time ever at AKA Grands. I end up stumbling. He beats me. And then right after that tournament, I travel with Sideswipe, which is a performance group that we went to Guam and, all over the place to Italy to perform for our Navy exchange. And I ended up rupturing my Achilles in Doha, Qatar, which is, the thing on the back of your ankle. If you don't have one of those, then you're not walking. So I'm not competing again for a year. That was probably the biggest point of adversity because you can't walk, you can't train, can't do anything. Martial arts is something that I loved, and I've climbed the seed ladder twice now. I know it's going to be 8 months to 12 months before I can even think about getting back to it. So I started to game plan. What am I going to do to be different? And now this enters more so what I've been known for in this sport is I want to hit the ground running. I want to be different. I want to speed this up. How can I do that? Well, we've always talked about kind of doing double bow. Let's do double bow. Let's now have 2 bow stabs. Let's start training that. Did sync with Jacob Pinto. He did double sword. I did double bow. And then we hit the ground running with that. Did a lot of work with Kalman Choka, Marcel Jones, and really person that helped out the most, and I try to bring this up as much as possible, is Cole, my younger brother, crazy with commas. And so we created something amazing with double bow, and that is where I would say most of my titles on the NASCA World Circuit start to come from, is, in the, whether it was the 16-17 division, but a lot of them started to take off in the adult division, winning the Diamond Rings, winning the Warrior Cups, winning the ISKA championships on ESPN. Probably about a year or 2 into double bow, that's where I started to get involved with like Hyper and like Roland Osborne, did some instructional DVDs. I was very fortunate enough for Roland to take me, Tyler, and like Mackenzie and Jackson, and like we would do all types of seminars all over the world, all over the country, which was really an awesome awesome experience to really see the impact that sport karate can have on other students and motivation and just get people in martial arts. And after that, Competitive Edge started, the competition team that I run with Jackson and Cole and Jake. And can't forget, demo queen, Miss Kathy, Jackson's mom. And trying to think. And then that really, this is where the battles start happening between myself, Cole, Tyler Weaver, Jackson Rudolph, Shaheen Jahanvash. Like, this is where probably after Competitive Edge started, now we're all adults. This is where the battles happened. Like, probably one of the best shows is one of the Bout of Atlantas. Maybe it's 2017 or 2018, where I think Jackson hit his form, Cole hit his form, I hit my form, Shaheen hit his form, Tyler hit his form. Like everybody hit their form, and that was so rare. And Tyler Weaver won, so kudos to him in that year. But that's where the battle started, and kind of towards the end of my career, I don't even really know. I say end of my career loosely because, I definitely have the itch to compete again. So we'll say that version of it. There could be another one. I got on a kick to want to do just forms because I was chasing the form ISKA champion. So there was the final year where I only did like one weapons tournament at the Bout of Atlanta. And so I was able to secure the ISKA forms title then. So that catches us up all from like getting my martial arts to competing. I'm sure that you'll probably ask more questions about the actual competitive side of it. If I quickly explain what I've been doing since competing, not long after, started Equipped, which is kind of first originally started as a way to do private lessons in a professional way, with a way that really builds up athletes. Not too long after that, I had to kind of put that a little bit on the back burner because I was approached by Premier Martial Arts to be, one of their first consultants to really help their franchise grow and kind of work with their trainings and some of their curriculum and really just how to run, martial arts schools. And then I was there for about 3.5 years, 4 years. I stepped back, I stepped away, and now I'm full-blown Equipped. We now not just work with athletes, but we also work with school owners and their staff on how to teach sport karate. And really, sport karate is such an amazing, unique thing that kids love. And I feel like if we want as many people to do martial arts as possible on this planet, then people need to know how to teach sport martial arts and sport karate. And it can be kind of scary to get involved in if you don't have someone that is just holding your hand and taking you all the way. So that is a brief little bit of post-career just to kind of catch you up to right now.
Yeah, that was really good. You articulated that very well, by the way. So how did you go from that first tournament of competing to that last tournament? Like, kind of walk me through like the first tournament. What were you feeling? What happened to like your favorite tournament to the last tournament?
First tournament, the main thing that stands out about that one, because I believe I was 6. Hard gym floor, tape around the ring. Mats wasn't a thing. And I got second place, and the trophy was like almost as big as me already. So I was like, yeah, I don't remember a whole lot more than that, to be honest. Those are the core memories that stuck. Hardwood floor, I think I had a move where I fell down into the split, so I hurt my heel a little bit, but means are justified by the end goal. So that's the first one that I can recall. My favorite tournament, that one is really tough because there are moments all throughout the competition scene that are very important. One that probably stands out the most is doing sync double bow with Cole. I think was a very cool experience. It was one thing to do double bow and be different, do it in a way that was competitive, but then to have your brother who normally does commas step out there with you on stage and do something that people, remember and really enjoyed. So anytime we did sync, those were awesome. And the U.S. Open, we got inspired, a little backstory for that one, why it's important. U.S. Open sync, and when we won the first title with that, we didn't have a form put together at the Battle of Atlanta, which was like 2 weeks prior. We weren't even really thinking about sync at all. But we got inspired by another team that was competing, and we were like, we need to give them a run for their money. We need to put them to the test. And so we went into the lab, we cut the music, we built the form, and that U.S. Open, we were able to show up and win. And so that was just really cool, really as an experience of like not having something prepared and then just having that sibling telepathy, like we've trained our whole life, let's just make this happen, and then executing it and being able, that was really cool. From a solo standpoint, I made a post recently about it, was the U.S. Open from, I think, 2016, maybe. I'm not the best with years. I'm trying to get better at it. Jackson is the Rolodex of like, back in 1956, this competitor got 9.98, like he knows everything. I'm so like in the moment that sometimes I can't even remember the year. But I think it was 2016 U.S. Open. The division from my memory hit their form. I had the fortunate opportunity of going last. I have always been more of a mental competitor than a rival / I have to beat this person type of competitor. Meaning like I have always been my own worst enemy because I can get in my head and I can drop or I can make a mistake or something. And Jackson, I've always been rivals, but I believe he also knew this too. When it came down to it, it was me versus me. Could I beat the Reid in my head and could I execute? That was the battle that I had to win. And so he hit his form, and in that moment where someone as amazing as Jackson nails his form on the ISKA U.S. Open stage, everything becomes clear as to what you have to now go do. Any strategy, do I do A form? Do I do B form? Do I give it my all? Do I pull back? Do I do this trick? Do I do that? And all of that goes away because when he hits, you're like, I got to throw everything in the kitchen sink. Let's do it. And so, there's a calmness in that because there's one path forward. It's rare that we ever have this knowledge or clarity of like, this is the one and only option and path that's right before you. And so with that becomes clarity. You get in the zone and you go execute. And that was the time that I got the 5 of 7 tens on the ISKA show. And that was just an amazing experience, all the way from, how Cole reacted. Like he came over there and like put his arms around me, big old bro hug. And, it was just really, really cool to think back to that time. And then last double bow tournament was Battle of Atlanta 2019, I think, 2018, 2019. I didn't do weapons all that year, but I was like, let's do it at the Battle of Atlanta. And reason why that one stands out the most is it was one of those times again where Cole, Jackson, and I all hit. And why those are so cool is because the crowd normally is just so electric when that happens, because Cole and I, more than Jackson, would make our mistakes or make our drops. And so Jackson sometimes would have to like pull his form back because we already eliminated, like things happen. But when all of us nailed it and we're all gunning for it and the crowd doesn't know where the judges are going to score, who's going to pull the 9s, who's going to get can anyone get a 10 or multiple of them going to get a 10? Like it just creates a really cool atmosphere when we would do that. And, so that's the main thing that stood out. And Cole won. So I didn't even win that time, but still being a part of that was always awesome. And I think the very last tournament was in Pan Am's. I did traditional weapons, and I mean, I don't know if I fully knew it was my last tournament. I had been thinking about it. I know that I needed to kind of think of the next step, and I didn't go to that tournament thinking this is the last one. So I don't have like this like big showcase like Kalman did where he's doing his blindfold performance and he has the big elaborate ending. You know, I didn't have that. So maybe that's why I kind of still have the competitive itch to get back out there. Maybe I got a little bit more in me.
Or how would you like articulate the thought process of starting a form to mastering it to competing with it and eventually winning with it? Like, walk me through that decision process of creating a form.
Absolutely. So starting is probably one of the hardest parts because you don't know where to go, so to speak. You know, this is where like coaches really play a role, or doing private lessons or with someone that has spent time building a number of forms. And then it's one of those things where it's almost easier to have someone help you build a form than it is to come up with your own form. Like, it's just that extra, if like sometimes it's easier for me to create a form for someone else than it is for me to create a form for myself. I don't know if that's just a me thing, but you know, so sometimes getting that outside help just to get started and build the skeleton. You want to have your intro, and you want to have 3 sections, really, as far as, you know, a NASCA form. Is your intro, where like you're doing your walk-in, talking to the judges, maybe a couple of powerful moves to get some hype built up, a big trick. Then you have your 3 primary sections. Some people like 4, but I like the pace of 3. Depending on the type of form that it is, each of the sections need to have, you know, striking techniques and blocks, martial arts. If it's CMX, it's going to be on the faster side of things. And then it needs to have some level of, if it's weapons, it's a release set, and maybe it's a trick or a trick pass. And then you need to have a good pause, a moment, so that the judges and everybody can appreciate everything that just happened before you then rinse and repeat going from section 2 to section 3. With double bow, I like to kind of have themes for the sections. So it was, you know, double bow strikes in section 1, like one hand in each. That's the theme of it. Section 2 is the elongated double bow staff. Really, I'm doing single bow, but I put them together and lengthened it so that it looks like this massive bow staff. And then sections 3 was probably my favorite now. I don't know if it was at the time, but just you're whipping them, you're swinging them. It's the baseball swing section. So those were kind of the themes and the outline of building a form. So getting that first, getting the skeleton is the most important part. And don't overthink it. And then from there, say the timing of it is correct and all of those things. What you want to be careful with after that, now we're going from the form is made and you're trying to master the form. Because I think that was kind of where your question was going from. How do you start it to how do you master it? How do you make this? Mastering it really comes down to how can you make adaptations and changes to the form without sacrificing the muscle memory that you are acquiring through all of your section work, full form training, and microsections. So a lot of times people, they get a form, they compete with it for a year or 2, and then they want to blow it up with dynamite, and then they want to start fresh again, and they want to go again. Sometimes that's necessary. Sometimes a form does need to be completely reconstructed. A lot of times there's elements that you can hold on to in the form that still tricks your mind to think that you've done this 1,000 times already. And so it just makes you faster and stronger, and you're developing your form. You are mastering a form. You can do micro sections, which would be taking 2 or 3 moves at a time from a section and just training those in sequence so that you're mastering how those connect and the flow and everything. And you can do that and master moves. But when it comes down to the form, you kind of have to view it as one whole thing that you need to rep to really master. And so that is where I think some people get almost in a loop sometimes. They create, they do okay with it, and then they're like, I need to upgrade, I need to change, let me create again. Instead of, what do I do really well? What am I really good at in this form? What am I not so good at? Let's focus on changing the not so good at moves. Maybe I don't flow well. Maybe I don't need to have this flying sidekick in here. Maybe I don't need to, I can't think of another example. Maybe I need to change the flash kick, change little elements, but make sure that you kind of save and lock down the parts that you do really well so that you're not losing that. That's where you start to see, if you go back and you look at, I'll just use Jackson, for example, or look at me. Our forms changed over time, but year to year sometimes would be very small changes. Maybe year to 3 or 4 years later, there's a more drastic change if you compare those. But, that's how you master it, is you don't get change crazy. The answer sometimes is not, oh, how do I win? I need a new form. Sometimes it's, how do I win? Well, get better at doing your form. It can be that simple sometimes.
How do you create that risk factor in the form? Like, how do you make the audience go like, whoa, or awe? Because you kind of need that to have a really good form to score at the end of the day.
It is tricky because everyone thinks that it's a mixture. Difficulty or perceived difficulty is one way to make the crowd get engaged. If I throw a bow staff up in the air and I spin 4 times and I catch it, the perceived, and that is difficult, I'm not saying it's not, but the perceived difficulty of that by the crowd, that was really hard. So you get that awe factor from the perceived difficulty. There was some moves that we all have done. One of mine, I'm sure there's a clip of it somewhere, where I have the bows together. I go behind my back and then I separate them real fast. I spin twice, hand roll, and boom. That move sometimes would get more crowd response than some of my other bigger, way more difficult moves, because the perception of the move was really, like, that move was really hard. That looked cool. On my side of things, it was one of the easiest moves in the form. It never really left my hands, but the perception of it was that it was really difficult. So difficulty plays a role in this, or I have to say it one more time, the perception of the difficulty plays a role. The part that I think people miss out on the most, because you see a lot of people doing crazy difficult things now, really kind of more so than what was happening when my generation was competing, which feels weird to say. I'm only 28, but my generation, is the confidence while doing the move, or the confidence and excitement that you show, the emotion that you show after the move. I think that is also something that you need both. You need the perceived difficulty, and then you need to act like it was really hard, or that you're very happy that you nailed it. Because us as people, we react off of facial expressions. Like if we're angry, then you can tell that I'm angry. If I'm excited, then you get excited. And so there's a little bit of that inside of these forms. If someone does, let's just go crazy, they do a double backflip and then they land and they're like, that was a double backflip, that was cool. But the crowd's going to be like, did he mess up? Was he trying to do triple backflip? Like what? But if that person does double backflip, lands, boom, wow, and they're like pumped and they're like shaking and they're just all about it, then the crowd's going to go, oh my gosh, must have been really difficult. He might have been nervous. He just nailed it. Man, I've never seen anybody nail it that good before. Oh wow, he's still going. Oh, he just did double cork now. Like, you see what I'm saying? Like, it's it's that confidence, that performance value with the difficulty, and then you kind of mesh them together. I used to call them like pauses or picture moments, but really it's cheer points. Like you are telling the crowd, did you see what I just did? I'm proud that I just did that. What did you think? Let me hear you. Like, that's kind of what you need, and that plays a role.
How do you make sure, as like the tricker or the martial artist, to make sure there's enough like traditional stuff, like basic strikes, to the flips, to the releases? Like, how do you make sure you have like a healthy balance, or there shouldn't really be a balance?
There is definitely because you kind of see it. You kind of see it naturally if you look at competitors, because there are people that can do crazy tricks or releases or whatever, and then the crowd sometimes thinks, oh man, they might have pulled a 9, they might have won it, and then they get something like a 5 or a 6 or something that is not what sometimes the crowd thought it would be. And the judges kind of hold that baseline of martial arts. I don't feel like I was very clear on that, but you have to have enough good karate or good martial arts for the tricks to really play a heavy hand, because the judges are going to have a hard time throwing a 9, giving someone the win if the chambers are coming back to the chest and not pulling all the way back. If you're punching and there's a hole inside of the fist here when you're punching, if your techniques are bent, I'm trying to stay in frame as I do it. Like it doesn't matter. You could do a double backflip, but if all of your techniques are all super in tight, then it's just going to be super hard. Or the same goes for the stances. So to more specifically say, how do you maintain enough martial arts and stay away from the tricking? Forms, I feel like it's a little more straightforward. Like if I'm doing a section, I'm probably going to do some level of got the hand techniques, boom, 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 maybe one trick to the knee, stand up, reset, then like a 4 or 5 moves trick pass, boom. Then I'm going to do like another 15 or so moves, get into the corner, flip, come back. Like the ratio is probably one trick per 8 to 12 techniques. I'm just kind of making that up on the spot, but you can kind of see how the body of the form is the martial arts, and then the tricking or releases is just accent marks inside of the form. I don't know, for some reason it's hard to answer that. How do you have enough? It's make sure there's enough in there. You know, don't just overload it with tricks. You know, if you look at, I'll just use my double bow form as an example. It was like 1 strike, 2 strikes, 3 strikes, 4 strikes, 5 strikes, prep, side swipe, hit, switch, pull. Then I would go into my juggler act position, cartwheel hyper full, and pause. So there was still like a healthy amount of striking even with double bow. A kick, side swipe, it is a trick, but it still kind of gets that martial arts aspect because it's a kick. Then I put the bows together, overhead, reverse, separate, double, strike, up, down, side, hit, reverse, spin, boom. Like striking the whole time, swing, boom. Then it's the spinning move into the circus pop, boom. Then it's baseball swing. So like you see, like there's not that many tricks, but some people would confuse some of my striking or movements as tricks or spins because they were just being done fast and executed, you know, so.
That's interesting, and I'm surprised you remember all this. Like, it's like engraved in your head, and I'm like the same way. Whenever I was competing, I had like the form just stuck in my head, even to this day in college. But do you think a martial artist can be a great tricker, or they're kind of two separate things when you're competing?
I definitely think that a martial artist, you know, I mean, it kind of comes down to the type of martial arts they did. But by the average martial artist, I don't necessarily mean average in skill. I more so mean like the net average of all types, karate and stuff like that. they are going to have a coordination and an understanding of body mechanics that if they're willing to have an open mind and learn the differences between some of the tricking moves, then they should be able to learn at some level. And really, the time you get into it, the time you put into it will give you, the results. You get what you focus on. So if they spent enough time, which is different for everybody, then they should be able to get some level of tricking ability. More specific, I would say maybe Taekwondo or people that start with creative and have the jump kicks, they're probably going to have an easier path into it. Hardstyle karate is a little more rigid on the movement, so it might be a little more difficult for them to get into it. But I definitely don't feel that it's like a barrier wall that there's no way you could go become a good tricker. However, tricking is complex movement, so it really comes down to a time and commitment thing, just like anything. Going back the other direction, tricking to martial arts, if you are willing to spend the time to go through the boring stuff and just drill the front stances and the chambers and the chops and everything as many times as you did the corkscrews, then absolutely. So I guess I'm saying the same thing applies to both. You have to appreciate the traditional elements of the other side of this. They are different. I don't think you could say they're the same. And it's going to take time. I was the kind of competitor that I did enjoy tricking, but I can't say I fell in love with tricking. I more so tricked to the extent to be competitive inside of NASCA. Like, what moves do I need to add value to my form? Let's go work on those. And then eventually I started getting to the point where it's like, okay, this is a lot of fun. But initially it was a means to an end. I need to have a 540. I need to have a flash. I need to have a full, let's go learn those. So hopefully that kind of answers the question a little bit. It's tough because tricking is one of those things where it's really easy for some people and it's really hard for some people. And I don't know if I can associate it to style of martial arts, athletic ability. Tricking is a lot of a mental game, and it comes really naturally for some people that are fearless, and it's really hard for some people that overthink and think. I had to fight a lot of battles to be able to do some of the tricks that I did. Took me a while to be able to do and really tap into the tricking side of things.
So do you think that someone who grew up on learning like front stances, chambers, like the very traditional-esque martial arts could really just benefit just from the idea of high volume, high intensity, reps, all of that into tricking? Or do you think tricking is so different from those principles in other martial arts that you kind of have to reteach yourself in some degree?
I would almost say, because I think this helped me a lot, and it has helped, a fair amount of people that are fortunate to do this. If you're going from traditional martial arts, the bridge to tricking, in my opinion, is you get a little bit of gymnastics kind of in there. You kind of learn the cartwheels, the handstands, the round-offs, the back handsprings, the back tucks. You understand how to be inverted. You understand the core work of it. You understand how to generate explosive power. You apply that to plyometrics. Then you can kind of step into that tricking world. I would say that would be one of the easier paths forward. Getting on a trampoline, jumping around, going to an actual tumbling coach. You don't need, when I say gymnastics, it's really tumbling, the floor work, the stuff that Simone Biles is insane at, that would be my recommendation for that person, because gymnastics is even though they're doing backflips and stuff, which we deem extreme, it's very traditional. They have their very specific paths forward, and so those kind of overlap, and then tricking is there.
Now, I've been basically watching you and Jackson Rudolph and Mackenzie Emery since I was like a little kid. Who are you watching when you were kind of going up the ladder in competing and et cetera?
You know, people that the first person that I feel like stood out, because my coach, instructor Jason Warren, really pointed her out, because we're both like always been kind of bostaff, was a Casey Marks, and Casey Marks Nash now. So she was one for sure. Then it did kind of transition, never really left her, but then the additional ones would be the Matt Emmigs, the Steve Taradas, the Daniel Sterlings. In traditional, you had the John Sue, the Gabriel, like anyone and everyone that was on that stage was someone's like, I want to do that. If I had to really specify the inspiration behind things, was Kalman was a very dominant like just like what he did with the weapons was so powerful. Like when he was inside of the room, like you felt everything that he was doing, that I would say that a lot of focus was on him. Got a lot of influence from Marcel Jones, just his sheer power and way he thinks about things. And then one that I was thinking about the other day, because we're relatively close in age, that sometimes I forget that I looked up to him a lot and like cheered him on in the crowds. And was like, yeah, I couldn't wait to see him compete, was Micah Carnes. You know, like that was a big boost to motivation, you know, looking up to him. So that would be kind of my list. And if I'm not allowed to say my fellow competitors during that time, you know, the Cole Eckerts, the Ross Constams, you know, the Austin Cranes, you know, Tyler, I've said Tyler multiple times, but Tyler and Jacob and, you know, all of them, like there's a lot of, you know, looking next to you for motivation. But if I had to pick from the greats, then those are the ones.
What made it so exciting for you in this sport? Like, what made you keep going? What made you become like a fan, a competitor? Like, how did you think, like, what made you decide that I want to be a part of this?
There's just a feeling while you do it that you just love it. I just love it. You know, I think as a kid, you enjoy the feeling of progress / getting a new release, or there's a confidence that you start to find when you bow into the ring, and maybe that confidence doesn't leave the ring because you're still too scared to go order your Happy Meal, but you start to taste the feeling. That has nothing to do with me, of course, but you know, there's like that feeling of confidence, that validation, like being in there. But then also just I think the community played a large role. You know, I started going to summer and winter camps with AKA and met some amazing friends and everything. So I think that kept me in it. But ultimately, what made me stick into it is I just fell in love with martial arts in general. You know, that was just a big part of it. What kept me going, I would say, goes back to almost that it's me against me kind of mentality of you get results from the work you put into it, and you can always be better. So when you look at the competition, not so much I want to be first, I want to win the work. Those are great goals, but or another version of that is, oh, I can't wait to beat this person, competitor A, competitor B. You know, that's one way some people thrive with that, but really what helped me stay in it is I am just beating my last performance. What can I do from Battle of Atlanta to U.S. Open? What can I do from U.S. Open to Cap Classics? What can I do from Cap Classics to Diamond? And it's just that, it's that chase. It's that, how can I get better? How can I get faster? How can I get stronger? How can I do this? Can I get 7-10s? Like it's that feeling of just that improvement. And I believe that when you remove the competition from your life, and like maybe you're out, because college can kind of provide that as well. You got tests and you're trying to be top of your class. Like there's grading skills, there's way to improve and stuff. But when you get out of some of these things that we grow into and you're away from competition, you're past college and stuff like that, there's not always that direct result of improvement. I'm kind of going way out into like just the mentality of things, but like as you get older, life gets tough. And so I think that feeling, that very clear example that you can see of like, yes, I'm better today than I was yesterday. And then you just I think that is very powerful. It's a strong feeling that I would love like all humans to feel that, because it just keeps you moving, keeps you excited about, life in general.
Kind of pivoting from here, you deal with a lot of kids and other people in terms of training them in martial arts, how to get them better. What is something you want to see across the board to change among current day students?
That is tough. That is a big, what do I want to see change across modern days? Now, is this competitors in NASCA, or is this martial arts students across the board? Because I feel like that might be different.
Let's do NASCA first.
It's not, I think that it would have a physical or routine change, but it's not that. It's not a technique. It's not a new trick. It's not a style of doing it. I don't know if the average or even above average NASCA competitor enjoys the process as much as we did. And I know that makes me sound like an old man, but I truly don't know. I hear so much. My goal is to get a 9. My goal is to get first place. My goal is to beat this person. My goal, and I think that is they want to be on the top of the mountain, but I don't know if they love the climb. Now I know where that expression comes from. You gotta love the journey. I just kind of explained that, so I know it's not net new, but because I believe that would change kind of the energy that some competitors that, even I have direct influence over. Because if you enjoy the process, then it's going to make it easier to get back up after a loss. But if you're just chasing the wins or to beat this person or that person, and you don't enjoy training, you almost got to enjoy the losses because it just means it wasn't good enough. Better next time, And so I think that could be something that I would almost want to change.
Kind of thinking back when I used to compete like consistently, because now I'm in school, things changed a bit. Fear and excitement are often very similar feelings with different undertones. How do you turn fear of losing into excitement and motivation to compete and do new things and try to throw things on the wall and see if they stick?
I said something recently to Competitive Edge in a meeting before the U.S. Open that was, and I'm going to try not to misquote myself on it, but it was, don't worry about what could go wrong. Get excited about how successful you could be. And so it's kind of right along with exactly what your question is. How do you turn that fear into excitement? And it really comes down to, I want to put a 540 in my form. Don't worry about if you accidentally slip. Think about how cool you're going to feel or how awesome you're going to feel when you nail it. And I believe it's that simple, because that's kind of what I had to do towards the end. Like I was a dropper by trade, if that makes sense. I dropped a lot mid-career. And my method to specifically answer your question was I had to verbally out loud say like words of affirmation and positive outcome. Instead of I'm not going to drop, I would have to say I'm going to nail my form. Tonight is my night. This is my division. I'm going to own the stage. This is my ring. I'm going to get that trophy. Like that was my method of taking those nerves, conquering them, turn them into excitement and confidence to go. That's how I had to do it. I think every person has to kind of experiment a little bit with their method. Some people it's a song. Some people it's staring a hole in the wall. It is different. I've seen it all, right? But so it's it's the mindset of, don't worry about the negative outcomes. Get excited about that one positive one that is before you. And then find the tactics that you can utilize to get you there. I just saw that Philip Brumet, he just put it on his story yesterday maybe, that before he goes out there and does his weapons performance, he does each release 25 times. And that's his routine. That's his method. That's what he does, because he claimed that he's a very nervous and anxious competitor, and that's how he overcomes it. So that's kind of my thought process on turning that fear into excitement.
How do you advise someone, in martial arts or not, to find their thing that they need to go and discover, they need to go and experiment to achieve success? Like, how would you tell that person to go and just try things, discover stuff? Like, what's your advice towards that?
You have to get out there. I mean, it really is that first step of just getting in the ring. I don't know if it's completely relevant, but I'll say it. There's a difference between all the times that I prepared for U.S. Open right over there in front of that mirror and using that same form inside of a ring. There's ring time training, and then there's school mat time training. It's very hard to replicate the adrenaline, the feeling of eyes on you. It's hard to do that. And so my point of saying that is you want to feel that getting out, taking that step forward, almost being able to say, hey, I got out there, I tried, I did point fighting. I actually enjoyed the heck out of that. That was a lot of fun. I want to do that again. Or maybe it's like, I hated that. He hit me in the nose. I don't want to do that anymore. Let me go do something else. And so the open circuit is really cool because you can try a lot of different stuff. There's Korean challenge now. There's trad challenge. There's traditional forms, traditional weapons, CMX forms. There's sparring. There's continuous sparring. There's team sparring. There's so many things that, I mean, really, you just have to get out there. I mean, it is, not to oversimplify it, but that is the main thing that I would say. And, a lot of times I get asked this by athletes when it comes to weapons, and you need to do the weapons enough to where you just know which one. But a lot of times there's a certain special feeling you get when you pick up the right one, and you're just like, for me, it was bostaff, and I was very fortunate. It was the first one, but there's been others that they play with nunchucks, and Cole, he's one. We're bostaff family. He started learning bostaff. He didn't really like bostaff. Picked up commas, and so just got to give yourself a chance,
Awesome. And my last question for you is, what advice do you have for young people, especially in sport karate?
I can't say enjoy the journey again because I already talked a lot about that. That and advice. Be able to set goals, but not, you want to have the big crazy goal. Like if your goal could be, I want to win the Warrior Cup. That's a great goal. Chase it. Get motivated by it. I don't want to say but and discount that. In addition to that, work backwards from that goal and really think about the steps. You have the Warrior Cup. Probably want to win an overall. Probably want to win a runoff. Need to win a division. You need to get 1-9. And what I'm saying right now is going to contradict what I'm going to say next, but just bear with me. There are little goals along the way that you want to just kind of check off. Those are the check off goals. All of that in our sport are things that are out of your control. So they're good goals to have. You want to have those goals, but those are out of your control. There's 3 judges, 5 judges. There's other competitors. There are people that are in control. So while having those goals is very important, you have to be able to have that and take complete ownership of your training and your progress and the methods in which you go there. So you also want to have associating goals that are, I want to be able to do my form full out, full intensity 3 times in a row, because I don't want any of my competitors to ever say they outworked me. I don't want my competitors to ever have more endurance than me at the end of the form. I'm going to be the first one to do double backflip. You know what I'm saying? Like, just it's and someone has done double backflip, but you're putting a goal on something that you can control. So I guess if I were to put it simply, have your big wins, your Warrior Cups, teams that you want to be on, but also understand that those rely on other people as well, and have the goals that are completely within your grasp. Your stances, your technique, your intensity, your performance, your work ethic, your training, your attitude, your character. Those are all things you can control. And a lot of times, if you do all of those things that are within your control, then the other things are going to take care of themselves.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Reid, for coming out. Is there any last message you want to give to the audience who are listening?
Keep this sport going. Talk about martial arts to all your friends, because martial arts has completely changed my life. And you don't have to go into sport karate like we just talked about on this podcast, but it could just be getting into school like this, hitting some bags, making some friends, building your character, inspiring the next generation, and just ultimately making the world a better place. You know, I think that martial arts has the power to really impact the world, because the characteristics in which you get from it can just make you an awesome person, and you can find a lot of success in other areas outside of martial arts. So I guess my ask is that, you know, you just share the passion with others, you know, and let's keep on growing it.